President Buhari describes year 2020 as Nigeria's decade of greater prospect of development.
An African Development Bank pledges support to Nigeria's genuine efforts at receding Lake Chad Basin.
We secured $115 billion of new capital from our shareholders, which will give a lot of resources for us to support African countries.
War against corruption, EFCC hands over forfeited property to National Directorate of Employment.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we look at projections for the new year 2020.
The much-awaited year 2020, that is another decade, is here, and Nigerians ushered the new year with special prayers and fanfare across the land.
Obviously, Jermaine, the usual practice is routine that Nigerians gather at various locations, some, of course, in places of worship, others at recreation centers to welcome the brand new year.
Exactly, Claire. No matter the way one chooses to celebrate the beginning of the new decade, this year is seen by many as a year of hope, going by what is contained in the numerous New Year messages from eminent Nigerians.
And one of those personalities we're talking about is no other than the #1 citizen in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, who in his New Year message, which is tagged year 2020 as a time of hope, optimism and fresh possibilities.
And Claire, in the new year, which touches critical sectors in the message of the economy, President Buhari spoke on the numerous achievements recorded in the past year and efforts being made to fix various infrastructure ranging from rail to roads and power.
And indeed, he also mentioned very valid steps that will be taken to improve agriculture, security of lives and property, as well as strengthening the electoral process, both here in Nigeria and, of course, across the West African sub-region, and principally to deepen our democracy.
It is a brand new year with new hopes and great expectations of a better deal across all facets of national life.
Already, Nigerians are looking into the crystal ball also to see what the year holds for them. Now, in terms of in the economy, in the politics, and of course, otherwise, how will the country fare economically, you want to ask? How many more critical national infrastructure will spring up this year as already projected in the 2020 budget? And this is the big one. What developmental steps would Nigeria take this decade?
And, you know, Claire, these and more questions would engage our panel of guests as we look at projections for 2020 on Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Jumoy Yusuf, welcoming you to the first edition of Good Morning Nigeria 2020. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority and beaming to you from the nation's capital, Abuja.
And as is customary, we want to say Happy New Year to all of you, wherever you're watching. This is Good Morning Nigeria. I am Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. Once again, we want to welcome you to a brand new year, wherever you are. And I hope you have also made your routine resolutions. In the course of the program, we'll be bringing you complimentary segments as always. We will be looking at newspaper review, what they have to say this morning. Bayo will be here with us. We'll be looking at the business. Of course, we know that today is a public holiday in most parts of the world, but still, our business desks have been up. They'll bring us how business have been faring. But again, let's move on to our new studio where Comfort Modu, who has also, just like us, has been on duty. Comfort, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. Happy New Year. And here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has described the year 2020 as Nigerians' decade with a great prospect of prosperous, economically viable and well-secure country. In his New Year message, President Buhari restated that he will be standing down in 2023 and will not be available in any future elections, assuring Nigerians that the new year provides the opportunity to build on the foundations laid so far. for a stable, sustainable and more prosperous future. The President explained the joint land border security exercise currently taking place is meant to safeguard Nigeria's economy and security. He said Nigeria realizes that it is the helper and shock absorber of the sub-region but cannot allow the country's well-planned economic regeneration plans to be sabotaged. Now, the African Development Bank has pledged a total support to the genuine efforts by President Muhammadu Buhari at recharging the receding Lake Chad, addressing challenges of security and rebuilding the badly devastated Northeast. President of the bank, Dr. Akinwumi Additional, who made the pledge during an audience with the Nigerian leader, said the African Development Bank will also support infrastructure development as well as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
President Buhari has put forward a very bold decision to help with the recharging of Lake Chad Basin. And I have told President Buhari that he has my full support. And of course, the African Development Bank is supporting quite a lot in the Northeast area, Northeast region of the country. We provided about $253 million to support basic livelihoods in the Northeast of the country. As we look towards the future, basically our focus is going to be on how do we support the continental free trade area. We'll continue to do a lot of investment in infrastructure. I have said it.
Federal government's fight against corruption continues to produce positive results with forfeitures of property acquired through fraudulent means. Some forfeited properties rather are already being put to productive use, one of which is a structure that will now serve as corporate headquarters of the National Directorate of Employment.
Evidence to show and to prove that the government of President Muhammadu Buhari is indeed serious about fighting corruption, is indeed serious about increasing the capacity of ministry, departments and agencies by allowing them to have their own properties, which of course some of these properties are processes of crime.
With what we have received from EFCC and the letters of certification they are giving to us, I'm telling you already arrangement has been put in place. We are going to be adequately funded by the federal government so that we can have this building put in place.
Meanwhile, the federal government is providing job opportunity for more than 1,000 youth in 6 states through a project tagged Agro-Processing Productivity Enhancement and Livelihood Improvement Support Scheme. The beneficiaries will be engaged along 3 value chains of aquaculture, poultry and rice, as well as dairy products.
And we believe by the time we go out into the labor market, there will be a greater farmer. We've been well drilled, we've been well tutored, we've been well nurtured, and we want to promise them that we're also going out there to impact what they have built into us, into the community. Not just about 350 youths and women that are empowered, it's actually a multiplier effect because more people will be employed even by these beneficiaries.
And in the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Nigerians in the Diaspora Commission to ensure that the welfare, well-being and safety of the nation's citizens abroad remain paramount in the execution of its mandate. The Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, announced this while briefing newsmen after an audience with the President.
Follow the President's instruction. The Commission will engage with Nigerians wherever they are to ensure that we do not take anyone for granted or neglect anyone. It's tough, it's challenging, but I know the Commission is up to the task. So as we move on into the new year, we have started the process of having a diaspora database to know exactly the number of Nigerians in diaspora as accurately as we can, where hopefully we'll have a diaspora policy to be rectified by the Federal Executive Council. And then we continue our engagement. As we look into the new year, we're going to ensure we put diaspora matters on the front burner.
Now, the Federal Capital Territory High Court sitting in Maitama has denied former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Mohammed Bello Adoki bail. The court resumed sitting to hear the bail application filed by the former minister on the grounds of ill health. Defense counsel Benson Ibonoi informed the court that he cannot argue the bail application because the prosecution only served him a preliminary objection this morning. As such, the defense will need time to reply to the objection. Responding to the prosecution, counsel Balasanga reminded the court of the existing court order to remand Adoki in EFCC's custody till January 2nd, 2020. The vacation Judge Justice Othman Usman says he will not be available to hear the application when the court order expires. As such, he is transferring the case file to the Chief Judge of the FCT High Court. Mohammed Bello Adoki was arrested on alleged abuse of office and money laundering in the Malabo oil deal. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues shortly with Jumai and Claire after the break. Happy New Year.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Gogi Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnership with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Lagos State Government, Canon, Delta Airlines, Royal Caribbean, Tour Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
My name is Giato Adeza Adams, the General Manager, Corporate and Strategic Communications, Nigerian Port Authority. As regards the land borders closure, available statistical data from APMT, which is one of our terminal operators that is involved in container handling terminal, has recorded an increase of 200 TEUs of cargoes into their terminal as a result of cargo diversion from the vessels originally meant for neighboring countries. That shows you that the terminal operators is going to have an increase in revenue, which is accrued to the terminal, and at the same time, Nigerian Port Authority will equally benefit from the revenue increase. So that is the benefit we have derived from the border closure.
Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. Economists forecast the continuous growth of Nigeria's economy and development in the year 2020. Abdul Karim Zurmi has more on business news.
Key drivers of growth in the year 2019, according to economists, were agriculture, mining, information and communications technology, ICT and manufacturing sectors. As the year 2020 begins, they underscored the need for the government to deepen the non-oil sector to better the nation's economy. Thus, Africa's GDP growth is projected to accelerate to 4.0% in 2019 and 4.1% in 2020, while real GDP is projected to grow by 2.3% in 2019 and 2.4% in 2020. A development economist, Emeka Okengo, says with the government's continuous efforts to fund infrastructure and business, the country will witness a robust growth in the year 2020, especially access to raw materials, skilled labor and technology, as well as job creation.
We were able to get the G2G signed by the government of Nigeria and the government of Russia, that we're also going to be getting, the steel sector, and then by extension, the metals and the mineral sector right. Okay? And what that translates is that you're going to now be having more homegrown infrastructure development projects, more jobs that are demand driven, okay? More value adding, products that can be able to earn you, forex.
Here are the closing figures of the last trading day of 2019, which closed 2 hours earlier than usual. With business news, Abdul Karim Zerbi.
All right, thank you for joining us or staying with us if you've just joined in. This is Good Morning Nigeria, this brand new day, 01/01/2020. And just to say thank you to Abdul Karim Zerbi for the business package. Coming up next is newspaper review. Don't go away. And our reviewer, Bayo Toby, is in the studio. Happy New Year, Bayo.
Thank you, June.
And you're looking quite newish today.
Thank you. Yes, good for the new year. Good morning, Nigeria. May the new year be peaceable and contentful for all of us.
Amen. This is the new, improved Bayo look.
Thank you.
Into that, but thank you. Happy New Year to you, Bayo.
Same to you.
All right. To me?
Yes, we begin with the Daily Independent today, and let's see what they have to say. At the bottom plate of the Daily Independent, I will tackle terrorist economic challenges headlong. That's coming from President Muhammadu Buhari. You find that story on page 38. By the side of the Daily Independent, it's in Nigeria's interest to embrace ECOWAS ECHO. African Development Bank President, that's on page 39. EFCC arrests Shehu Sani. You find that story on page 39. And Labour to mobilize against renovating National Assembly with 37 billion naira. That story is still on page 39. Claire, it's like we have the same...
all the papers yes, and pointing to one direction.
Yes,
and of course using the president's New Year message, as the lead story. The same thing is on the front page of the Daily Trust, and but it's captioned its own. Buhari renews hope for better Nigeria. That's how Daily Trust captioned its own lead story this morning, of course, with an excerpt of the president's New Year message right in front there, as you can see. Bayo, that's basically what it's on the front page this morning. What are you...
Well, by and large, the world welcomed 2020 with the usual spectacular fireworks. The first to usually celebrate it is in the area of New Zealand or Australia. And that one recalls the spectacular Australia Harbour fireworks. You can't miss it. It's captivating. And then you come down along to Tokyo, to Hong Kong, to London, to Paris. And we used to have fireworks too in Abuja until insecurity made it not quite safe to have them. But as we speak now, nations that are about 6 or 7 hours behind Nigeria are just about midnight now celebrating entering into the new year. But the new year has a lot of prospects, and the prospects are the indications that leaders use it at an occasion to call on Nigerians to unite together. President Muhammadu Buhari has assured millions of people affected by the Boko Haram insurgency that government, having won the war, we will also look at challenges of winning the peace. And the initiative is going to be ensuring that reconstruction and giving people back their lives will be the priority of the federal administration. Some political leaders too have also made some pronouncements. Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, Gbajabiamila Amelila, felicitated with Nigerians and says Nigerians should be united for the good of the country. He says, let's unite more against our challenges. Let us be our brother's keeper always. Deputy Senate President Obioma Agege also sent his own message. He's saying that the task of Nigeria is friendship, and we should all endeavor to be one nation, one people, and friendly people, so that we can collectively move our nation forward in the areas of its challenges for development.
All right, Jume, you have...
Yes, I still have the Daily Telegraph, and just above the masthead, NLC vows. We've read that in the only newspaper. NLC vows to shut down states over new wage, and national NSC closes 2019 with 15% loss, with a rider market capitalization now 12.958 trillion. Shawo Olu signs 1.68 trillion 2020 budget. That's coming from the New Telegraph, and you know the headlines there, just like the other newspapers, a letter from the president at New Year, Nigeria's decade. That's how it's described it, Nigeria's decade. And I hope it is a decade that Nigerians will celebrate to the glory of God.
Yes, 2019 is the end, and 2020 is beginning of another decade.
Yes.
And that is why the paper is describing it as Nigeria's decade. And as the year was ending yesterday, many public servants, as reported by the Blueprint, were singing Godwin. Why? They got alert for minimum wage.
Yes.
In fact, the News Agency of Agency of Nigeria reports that a director in the Ministry of Finance said that salaries, what do you call it now? Consequential adjustments were paid to the ministries, departments, and agencies. And like Jumai just read now, Nigeria Labour Congress says that it is poised to have a showdown with 31 state governors over their inability to meet the 31st December deadline for negotiations. So far, only 5 states, I think they are Lagos, Kebbi, Kaduna, Jigawa, and Adamawa, that have actually met and implemented the minimum wage. The other ones are still groping with negotiations along the line.
That's what it's actually also, but on the inside page of the Daily Trust. But another story which has not been captured by on the front pages, but we have it on the business page of Daily Trust, is the visit of the president of the African Development Bank and his call, for investment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund amounting to over $1.8 trillion on infrastructure. I thought that was another, instructive story.
Yeah, infrastructure is key because it is key to development. And not only that, it has the effect of also helping to engage and reduce the challenge of unemployment. Because when infrastructure construction is going on, several people get opportunity to get employed. And when the infrastructure is completed, for instance, in what we are having with roads and railway, at the end of the day, goods and services are moved easier, and the economy also blossomed from it. But one of the cardinal things that he emphasized was also the benefit that Nigeria and other West African countries would derive from what has been described as ECO, the West African currency. Maybe the appropriate name would have been the COAS, so that at least it has the Europe, they have Euro. Let's have COAS, so that you have the West Africa, which is the kernel of the... but some are calling it ECO. Ghana, for instance, has now taken the lead, and they are saying they want the ECO to be implemented, so that the region will have that singular currency. Other nations, our Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning has indicated that there are certain imperatives and parameters that must be put in place before we can have that single community currency. And every nation must take care so that it doesn't undermine its own economy. For instance, most of the French colonies have their currency under CFA, and it's related to France. And you
In
have
fact,
to
I was just going there.
Yes,
I was just
very careful with that.
Yes, I was just going to, to add, just by way of information, that there's a new development. I think the French CFA has now changed to ECO.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not going to be.
It's no longer CFA. It's now ECO.
Okay.
So
is it official?
Yeah. Yes. It's been trending. It's been trending. So that's another issue that we have to raise. If the members of the ECOWAS sub-region are going to use ECO as, the official common currency tag, then we must begin to also evaluate the impact of the French ECO, yes, on the ECOWAS yes.
And the story I wanted to read about, I think it's about the bank robbery on Saturday.
Yes.
Said he drove 5 robbers into bank premises, and inside page 37 he said he was promised 20% of the loaf.
Yes, the banker apparently was the mastermind from all investigations and the information put by the police command, Federal Capital Territory Police Command, by the Commissioner of Police when they were paraded. He apparently masterminded it. He got in contact with them, and he was promised 20% of the loot. And another chap who had also been registered in the military and was undergoing training, but was dismissed for failing the medical parameters, was the one who actually acquired for them guns for the operation. He was promised 7 million. At the end of the day, the whole thing went wild. The policeman who was on duty was quite vigilant. They were trying to tie him down, and when he was able to have his way, he shot at and killed one of them and raised an alarm. And that was why the FCT Police Command and the Federal Gas Brigade were able to condor off the place, and they were all arrested. But apparently, the banker who works in the customer service department was the one who coordinated the whole act. It's a matter of an in-house operation giving way to a conspiracy to rob the bank.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at the editorial. It's taken from what paper now? I want to get it. Okay, The Punch. And it's looking at the high rate of electrocution, which the editorial has described as unpardonable. Says, well, according to the regulator, that's NERC, 72 health and safety reports came up in the first quarter of 2019, out of which 10 deaths and 7 injuries occurred. And in that period, NEC implemented 6 separate enforcements, and of course, we know the several electrocution tragedies that, were recorded from 2017 and all that. But I think this editorial is basically saying that, that the discourse is talking about the role of the discourse, and that the NEC should also compel them to invest more in the equipment, giving them a firm deadline to replace all the worn-out, wires, poles, transformers, and other basic equipment, so that we'll have efficient distribution of electricity without, recording
Incidents of
this. Yes.
Yes, electrocution are often accidents that happen, especially when the professionals are happening. Other aspects of electrocution comes from illegal connections. People who are trying to steal electric power, and often they become victims of it. But it is instructive from the perspective of the editorial that the electricity companies must do something about that by getting efficient equipment to protect their personnel in working there. But another corollary to that is the directive now that has been given by the federal government has ordered the power distribution companies to migrate to what is called a cashless settlement platform. And they have a deadline by DISCOs have a deadline to transit to cashless platform by 31st of January 2013. And for R3, another category of residential consumers have a deadline up to 31st March. And what that means is that all transactions will be cashless. And that will go a long way in eliminating the middlemen who often pilfer from what is called this. Instead of paying through the meter, you now have periodic estimated bills into the pockets of individuals. So when you have a cashless situation, then you'll be sure that the transactions are electronic and they can be traced. And that will go a long way in eliminating some of the fraud. So that is some of the positive developments.
Ideal, very ideal. But again, implementation of that and the effective implementation of that, it's another factor.
But we all cannot miss the alarm that has raised by UNICEF. UNICEF said today, New Year's Day, 26,037 beds will be made. That is 26,037 beds babies will be delivered today.
Today?
Yes.
January?
Yes.
1st January?
1st January.
That's good news.
In Nigeria. And the world over, 392,078 beds will be delivered today. But sadly, this is 7% of them may not live to see the end of the first month. And UNICEF is saying that there is need for us all to be concerned about our children surviving so that they can be future leaders of tomorrow.
All right, Bayo, we must appreciate you, your commitment so far, with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And we hope to be better, raise the bar
2020
this year by the grace of God. Thank you very much, Bayo. We'll see you tomorrow.
Too.
And do have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria this brand new day. Don't go away. We'll be right back with our conversation today.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant authors and men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the country united.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It would be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
We have come to the end of another successful year, and we wish to appreciate all those that mean so much to us. Our sponsors, our clients, government at all levels, corporate bodies, advertisers, religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties, and above all, you, our esteemed viewer. Together, we made 2019 great. Together, we shall make 2020 even greater. That is why we say, thank you. This is wishing you Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Welcome back. In a New Year message, President Muhammadu Buhari has described the year 2020 as Nigeria's decade with a great prospect of a prosperous, economically viable and well-secured country. Ruth Aguele reports a backgrounder on President Buhari's New Year message.
President Muhammadu Buhari took a long look back to 2015 when he was elected the president of the country. expressing his determination to help strengthen the electoral process both in Nigeria and across the region, where several ECOWAS members go to the polls this year. The president believes Nigeria needs a democratic government that can guarantee peace and security in order to realize the full potential of its ingenious, entrepreneurial, and hard-working people. This is why he recalled the multi-pronged approach to fighting violent extremists, cultists, and organized criminal networks. President Buhari admitted that it has not been easy, but remained hopeful of victory in the fight against terrorism that will pave the way for peace, reconstruction of lives, communities, and markets. The Northeast Development Commission, working with local and international stakeholders, has been rightly positioned to help create a new beginning for the Northeast, he said. The federal government, he explained, will continue to work with state governors, neighboring states, and international partners to tackle the root causes of violent extremism and the networks that help finance and organize terror. President Buhari assured that the security forces will receive the best of training and modern weaponry in order to position them properly, to use emerging technological resources available to tackle kidnapping, banditry, and armed robbery. With the new Ministry of Police Affairs and the security reforms being introduced, the president assured Nigerians that government actions at all times will be governed by the rule of law. On the economic front, President Buhari explained that various government policies are designed to promote genuine, balanced growth that delivers jobs and rewards industry, while the new Economic Advisory Council has brought together respected and independent thinkers to advise on a strategy that champions inclusive and balanced growth and, above all, fights poverty and safeguards national economic interests. The president expressed his excitement over the revolution in agriculture, which is already a reality in all corners of the country, noting that many homes are not adorned with imported goods and foods that can be produced locally. He recalled the agreement with Morocco, Russia, and other countries that helped in the transformation in the agriculture sector. While wishing Nigerians a prosperous new year, President Buhari said Nigeria will continue to pursue this inclusive growth, further enhanced by the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the creation of the National Action Committee to oversee its implementation and capitalize on regional and continental markets.
And President Muhammadu Buhari's New Year message also talked about the essence of the land border drills. In that message, he explained that the land border security exercise currently taking place so far is meant to safeguard Nigeria's economy and, of course, her security. Fisaya Ogunfoyi tells us all about it again.
The president, in a statement tagged Nigeria's Decade, sought the understanding of Nigeria's neighbors, assuring them that as soon as Nigeria is satisfied that the safeguards put in place are adequate, normal cross-border movements will be resumed. The president highlighted various key infrastructure investments in place or ongoing to enhance the ease of doing business in the country, prospects for better Nigeria in 2020. These include key roads such as the Second Niger Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and the Abuja-Kano Highway, and the prospect of tangible progress on the Lagos to Kano rail line, as well as fixing strategic roads such as the Apapa-Orunshoki Expressway. Kano and Lagos new international airport terminals are in the pipeline for 2020. In the power sector, government is said has engaged extensively with stakeholders to develop a series of comprehensive solutions to improve the reliability and availability of electricity across the country. These solutions include ensuring fiscal sustainability for the sector, increasing both government and private sector investments in the power transmission, and distribution segments, improving payment transparency through the deployment of smart meters, and ensuring regulatory actions maximize service delivery. Government has also placed a new deal with Siemens to invest in the new capacity for generation, transmission, and distribution of power. Apart from this, work on the AKK gas pipeline and OB3 gas pipeline and the expansion of the Escravos-Lagos pipeline is expected to commence in the first quarter of 2020. President Buhari restated his commitment to taking 100 million Nigerians out of mass poverty over the next 10 years, promising reforms in education, healthcare, and water sanitation, while workers will have a living wage and pensioners will be looked after. The new Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, he explained, will consolidate and build on the social intervention schemes and will enhance the checks and balances necessary for this set of programs to succeed for the long term. President Muhammadu Buhari projects the year 2020 as a Nigerian decade of prosperity, promising Nigerians to expect the following projects in the year. 47 road projects scheduled for completion in 2020-2021 include roads leading to ports, major bridges including substantial work on the second Niger Bridge, completion of 13 housing estates under the National Housing Project Plan, Lagos, Kano, Maiduguri, and Enugu international airports to be commissioned in 2020, launching of an agricultural rural mechanization scheme that will cover 700 local governments over a period of 3 years, launching of the livestock development project grazing model in Gombe State, where 200,000 hectares of land has been identified, training of 50,000 workers to complement the country's 7,000 extension workers, commissioning of the Lagos-Ibadan-Itakpe Warri rail lines in the first quarter, commencement of the Ibadan, Abuja, and Kano-Kaduna rail lines also in the first quarter, further liberalization of the power sector to allow businesses to generate and sell power, commencement of the construction of the Mambila Power Project for the first half of 2020, and commencement of the construction of the AKK gas pipeline, OB3 gas pipeline, and the expansion of the Escravos-Lagos pipeline in the first quarter of 2020.
And joining us in the studio to discuss projections for 2020 is Garba Shehu, SSA Media and Publicity. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
New Year.
Happy New Year
It's
to
a pleasure
you.
to have you join us as usual.
I appreciate it.
Also with us in the studio is Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State, and Public Affairs commentator. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much. And happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to Nigerians.
Thank you.
All right, let me also welcome one of our own. We're claiming him because he's a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. Niyi Akinshijo is an investment and financial expert. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Happy New Year to you.
And Rinsola Abiola is also our own, a public affairs analyst, a youth activist, and one time youth leader. You are.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you for having me.
And a politician, of course.
She's also an advocate for youth inclusiveness and gender equity.
Yes, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
But we are there's gender equity here.
It's not equity. We have one from Benin Studio. We're joined by Dr. Okozo Osaworo, public affairs analyst. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you, to all our compatriots and men and women of goodwill across the world. Happy New Year.
All right, let's kick off, and we'll start in obviously with Malam Garba Shehu, and looking at the tone of Mr. President's New Year message. How will you evaluate it in terms of policy implementation?
Well, again, Happy New Year to you, to all the viewers. The tone, the messaging, the presentation, and the packaging. I think it will not be an overstatement to say that this is the most important, or perhaps one of the most important messages coming from the president. He is into his 5th year now. This is the first time he's writing a letter to Nigerians.
Precisely.
And you know, the way it is presented, looking at the front pages of this morning's newspapers, you can see that the president chose the medium of advertising to reach the hearts of Nigerians, go directly to Nigerians without the mediation. I'm not going to call it meddling by editors. Editors, by their profession, they make their choices. They choose what to give prominence to and what to downplay. The president wants his entire message to go to Nigerians undiluted, without any form of mediation. So that's an important thing to notice. And so therefore, this is a new year and the commencement of a new decade. And the president, being focused as he has always been, is saying that, look, this is about security, diversification, and war against corruption. We have built foundations. We are now going to build on those foundations going forward. And you can see a determination, really, from the tone that you just mentioned now, that the president is clearly determined that this time around we are going to make a break with poverty. The 10 million he mentioned, he restated in this statement that will be lifted out of poverty. We are going to make a break with underdevelopment by tackling major infrastructure projects, the deficit of which we have suffered. You know, for all the years we had existed as a nation. So we are going to take a major leap and see to the realization of a number of infrastructure projects that are necessary, basic requirements if this country is to achieve development.
You just before Jume comes in, you talked about the choice of letter, letter writing. Can you explain, that much more? Because usually, in fact, one of the online, newspaper did carry. Bayo was telling us that there was a live broadcast. We know that usually Nigerians will expect that the president will come on a live broadcast, but we are saying that he deliberately chose letter writing to Nigerians.
Yeah, the president did a broadcast on January 1, 2019. But in doing that also he broke with tradition, because usually if you look back, the presidents of this country don't make broadcasts on January 1. But as we said this time around, he chose the medium of the letter, and it is a message to Nigerians. For him, Nigerians, each one Nigerian must get this message in its complete form, so that you don't read a part here, a part there, newspaper editor taking this or that angle. No, it is paid for in newspapers, and hopefully broadcast will help us to convey all of the messaging. Indeed. And to appreciate that this is an important turning point in the affairs of this country.
Yes, indeed, all the papers today.
We had all the papers
on the front page. That's the headlines we're watching there, and
so
we
this
read
is how
them.
important it is to the
president. A letter from the president at New Year.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe we need to just raise some of the papers.
Yes.
So they're all uniform. They're all uniform.
Yes.
Do we have it? Okay.
Yes. They're all the same letters.
Yes, the same.
So for today, the president has displaced all other stories from the front pages.
They say
he wants full attention on his own message.
Yes, on the letter, and so that Nigerians can dissect it.
Exactly.
And know how to help in making sure that all these itemized things are brought to fore in 2020, and Nigerians will help the administration to make sure that it is a reality.
Exactly.
And
I wanted us to let our other guests.
Yes, I'll be coming to Ni actually.
Yes, go around the president's choice of letter writing.
Letter writing.
What?
I think beyond just the choice of letter writing, I want to connect to the content, and that is very important. That is key. What the president wanted us to do as a people is to connect to the content. And then I will tell you from my own personal experience, a few years back, I do remember that as old as I am, my aged father had to run away when our hometown was overrun by insurgents, and he walked on foot for about 7 kilometers. Yes. It's always traumatic for me. My daughter got missing in the bush for 2 days. I was looking for her because our hometown was overrun. And that experience, makes me realize that there's a quantum lift in the improvement in the security situation. I visited Cameroon to go and locate my father, and I met our soldiers. They forced them to remove their uniforms. They were in sweaters and short knickers, being looked after by Cameroonian gendarmes because they ran away from the battlefront. That was the situation that was there before Buhari became the president. We seem to forget some of those things. And I also I connected to the message. End of year was traumatic for every Nigerian. Fuel was absent. People buy 250 to 300 a liter and they hardly see it. And people spend the night of New Year at the filling stations trying to queue and get fuel. This year and all the years under President Muhammadu Buhari, we've never witnessed these kind of things. So these are some of the positive things that this message is trying to tell you, that there's hope, that we're making progress. And the president said certain things that are key. Number one, he said he shouldn't have been doing what he's doing now. If he did not inherit an infrastructure deficit that made it impossible for Nigeria to even boast of 100 kilometers of good roads anywhere, he wouldn't have been working on roads. Now we would have moved forward. If we had developed our agriculture, the president should not be talking about agricultural development today. If we had spent all the money we claim to have spent on power, why would the president be talking about power today? So the message is that this president wants us to connect with the situation as it was and the situation as it is today and what the situation would be tomorrow. And he is giving us hope that tomorrow would be far better than today. Just as today is definitely far better than yesterday. Those that traveled during the Christmas break will tell you that a lot of the roads they plied are no longer what they used to be. In the past, the roads were so terribly bad that they provided not just avenues for vehicles to, tumble over and have accidents, but for people to also block a whole section of the roads, because even if you make a distress call, for the security agents to reach there was a difficulty. So we're moving, and look at the railway. The railway was, and then one key message the president made, and we must remember this, that he says he is not going to make undue promises. He's going to be very realistic. And everything in that letter is very realistic, is achievable, is doable, and that the president must be commended for facing the reality in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Amesajo. Ni Akinsuju, let's have your opening comment on the president's speech.
Yeah, thank you so much. When I read the speech, or rather when I saw the format of the speech, I was excited. Excited, why? Because it shows that truly this is a next level government. Because when you have this sort of public communication platform, it talks to you, what it tells you is that government is thinking, and that there is a need for a paradigm shift in the way government communicates to Nigerians. I'd always observed a sort of cynicism in the Nigerian space, where people take information, and details for government with a sort of disbelief and mistrust, And of course, when you also have editorial imputation into government information and details, what it provides are slants of different shades. And what you come out from that are different noisy, perspectives. But when you have this kind of direct connection, what it does is when you are reading what the president is telling you, and it creates a bond, you know. For me, that was a direct information from the president, and I felt a direct bond to it, and it's also believable. I mean, for some of us that had also been following this government, most of the things that are said there are things that are being in the public space. Some of them had actually also been adumbrated, you know, by some other factors and elements in the space, you know. But now that the president had reiterated them, there is that believability about it, and it makes that message credible, you know. And talking about the content are strong, you know. And indeed, truly, this for me is the Nigerian decade. And it's like mobilizing the entire country, you know, around this message. Because what it does is, this is like a scorecard of the president. Hold on to it. At the end of 3 years, you know, start marking me. You know, he has given us what would happen in the first quarter of 2020, what he would do in the second quarter of 2020, up through to 2022-23, you know. So it does mean as if this one is your personal marking scheme for me. Okay. At the end of this period, mark me as appropriate.
Okay. Well, you want to bring in Isala?
Yes, we have to bring in the lady.
Well, I had actually gotten the letter as a broadcast before I got to see papers on my way here. And for me, I think it's a really good one. I recall the very first things that came to mind while I was reading it is that it's a different kind of communication from what we're used to. And I like the fact that it lays out very clearly what this administration has achieved and other things that Nigerians should look out for in future. I like the fact that the president talked about, you know, employment generation, job creation is of utmost importance to young people. I like the fact that power was mentioned. Power is also very important. It plays a very key role in the productivity of young people, especially. I like that security developments in security were highlighted. I like that infrastructure was talked about, roads to expect, 47, I believe, and a timeline for completion, because that's very important. So the president wasn't just saying we are going to do roads. He was giving us a timeline that we can hold him to, that, okay, by 2020, 2021, these roads should have been completed. And I think that's also very important for monitoring, for accountability, especially from the perspective of citizens wanting to engage their government. So it's a really good one. And I like the fact, as Malam Garba who said, you know, the press are very important, of course. But I like that this letter is out there in the public space. It has not been caught. It hasn't been pasted. It hasn't been, you know, meddled with. It's there. You have the complete picture. You can get fully what the president is trying to convey. And it's very balanced. It's very realistic. The tone is very believable. It is someone talking to his people. So I really like this, and I hope that Nigerians can get more letters in future.
All right, thank you, Rinsola.
Yes,
let's now move to Benin, where we have Dr. Okonzwa Osawaru. Dr. Okonzwa, if you look at the format, that's what we kicked off with, and the content, does it make the president's message, as you know, the guests here have said, believable, and are you connected with it?
Well, the format is new, and maybe the president wants to communicate to Nigerians that he wants to do things differently, and he wants our nation to travel a different path of progress. The way it is, going by the content, is a mixture of visioning and reporting. And then giving it the title of Nigeria's decade, it's actually a way of asking us to widen our scope, to probably generate a new spirit, and then the content of the letter itself, the different aspects of our national life, infrastructure, education, health, and so on. Yes, his focus on those areas is quite commendable. But for me, I think it's actually the long-range vision he's trying to communicate that is more important to me. Now, he will be in office till 2023, and he's talking about a whole decade. So the remaining 7 years, what was going to fill the gap? So that would have to be addressed by all the attitudes that will be promoted by us, and so on. And I'm also particularly happy, he mentioned there, he won't be available for another term of office because he has just 2 terms. There's been a lot of discussion around the country that some sort of suspicion that there was a 3rd term in the agenda and so on. He's debunked that. That is a very happy thing, putting the nation in a very good mood and the beginning of a decade. So that is actually an act of statesmanship. Now we begin to generate what will fill the remaining 7 years beyond 2023. There will be an election, of course, in 2023. What are we going to go by? What will political parties be doing? This particular letter, will it inform the manifestos of political parties? Will they be planning with it? Now, we go by law, but the law is supposed to be the minimum standard. What kind of nation are we going to be in another 10 years, since we are talking about Nigeria's decade? So some of the things, our next election will be full of rancor. Are we going to see ourselves as brothers? Will there be violence and so on and so forth? And then the particular components of the letter. When are we going to expect these things to fructify? And issues of education, issues of healthcare and so on, how much investment are we likely to infuse in those ones so that Nigerians will have the benefits early enough? So for me, I think the letter is good. The content is commendable and is encouraging. It's a way to begin a new year and a new decade. So let the hopes of Nigerians be raised, and we also pray the hopes be fulfilled.
All right,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. He's also talked about the electoral law and strengthening the electoral law. He said he's determined to help strengthen the electoral process both in Nigeria and across the region, where several ECOWAS members go to the polls. Mr. Garba Shehu, a lot of people are saying he should go beyond 2023. He's emphatic that he is stepping down in 2023. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that is an important message, especially at a time when internet gossip will not allow the president to rest, repeatedly speculating of a 3rd term or a dilution of democracy. So you can see clearly that the president is looking to strengthen democracy at home. He's even looking beyond Nigeria.
Yes.
Because as it is now, as he said in the speech, 6 West African countries will go for an election. And given the roles we had played in the past, supporting states to do free, fair, sometimes logistically, to do free and fair elections, and guaranteeing the process. Remember what happened in the Gambia, for instance, when Nigeria's aircraft was hovering over Banjul before the president who lost power and was unwilling to go. After accepting, then changed his mind. And so therefore, I don't like to use the word policeman, but Providence has given Nigeria a duty to our brother countries in West Africa, and if we are growing our democracy. We have a duty to grow democracy, in the sub-region and pretend over it as a system of government.
She talked about the fact that the president has emphatically said, look, no more 2023 for me, no more future elections. But we know that there are those who have been,
clamoring
for a 3rd term agenda. What?
Yeah, the problem we have is that there is a cheap access to publicity by some people. Some people, I tell you, some people will die if they don't get publicity. That's the way they are. So whatever will give them publicity, they will crave it, they will go for it. And knowing that Nigerians had been offended by an attempt to change the constitution and institute a 3rd term in the past, Nigerians said it was wrong, it was unacceptable, and they defeated it. No right-thinking Nigerian would think of bringing it back. In any case, the president is now saying, finally, look, I'm not available.
It's a no issue.
It's a no issue. And so therefore, I think that if people are serious, if they seek publicity, let them be constructive in other ways so that they get noticed rather than spreading internet gossip.
I'm wondering, Honorable, what would happen? Because normally the president would withhold, this kind of information now, knowing the political system and the political actors, how they are. You understand? What do you think, how do you think the political actors will take this message?
I think we should look beyond the political actors. the kernel of the message, look at it very, very closely. What the president desires, and this is very clear, what the president desires is that we should unify ourselves as a people, unify all the tendencies, political, economic, whatever, bring all the issues together and begin to unify ourselves around our desire to have a better Nigeria in the decade we are entering. And part of the things that could break that unity would have been a continuous debate and speculations on whether the president will contest in 2023 or not. But he is telling you, no, leave that out of discussion, because it's a matter that is very likely going to create divisions within the polity, overheat the polity, and redirect our focus away from developing our nation to discussing unnecessary political rancors that do not make any meaning to the polity. So the whole essence of making a very clear statement is for the president to say, look, let us get united around protecting our democracy. And I like the fact that he says, look, we will also help our brothers. In spite of the fact that we've closed our land borders partially in order to refocus our internal productive capacity and economy, and to make sure that we get to a level where we would be able to have correct indices of our development parameters in the different sectors where these unholy incursions from our neighbors, through smuggling of small arms and ammunitions, which is very dangerous for our security, smuggling of drugs. You heard that Benin Republic, for example, is the second largest importer of tramadol after the United States. You can imagine what is the population of Benin Republic.
And we are the dumping ground.
Naturally, you know this. So you understand the smuggling of rice that had expired years ago. Now that we stopped it, now we're eating rice that is grown in the very year we eat it. It's smuggling, and he's telling you that he's going to revive agriculture and connect it to industry. You see that once we grow our cotton, we are invariably saying we are going to grow back our textile industry. And once we grow our textile industry, the textile industry used to be the largest employer of labor up here. If we regrow it, we are going to increase jobs across the board, and it has a value chain. It's not just textile production, but it has a value chain, market value chain, user value chain. It increases if we have clothes that are cheap. It means our tailors, it means our embroidery makers, and all of these things. So he's telling you that we're going to go that way. He says we're going to work on power. When we work on power, power also has a multiplier effect on development. So all of these things are connected in the message. And he doesn't want us to divert our attention from doing all of this to start talking about politics at a time when politics is actually, immediately after elections, what you do is you abandon politics for a moment and focus on governance. And that's what the president is telling us. I am not talking politics. I'm talking governance. And these are the parameters upon which this governance process should be accessed. And don't forget, he's talking transparency. This is the first government that has established a portal for people to track funds and funding paid to contractors who are working in their villages. So today, what the president is telling us that in monitoring activities of contractors and project supervisors across the country, we, the citizens, have a role. And if we have a role, we must do that role in a united manner, not divided by the politics of who does what in 2023, but actually what happens between now and 2023 in terms of developing the nation.
All right, Ahmed, let's just pause you for a while, because I also like Ndiye to also speak to this issue, because the president is somehow a pillar, a very strong pillar, around which most of the positives we have recorded in all the sectors, have been built. Now that he has come out this early to say, look, I will not be available, what impact do you think that will have on, efforts to even sustain positives in the diverse sectors of the economy?
It's going to have an immediate impact. Don't forget that this debate argument, had been on for about 3-4 months now, and I know that the presidential media team had made several efforts to clear this on ground. But of course, some people would naturally try to make capital out of this rumor, as it were. Now, it's good that the president, this is the first time we've had occasions like this, where you had expected the president, who was the object, of this matter, to come and clear, And the president had done this in a most grand manner. It's not like talking to one other person. This is a clear message to Nigerians. I am not going to contest in 2023. He had first made this declaration at a meeting of APC NEC, where he said, and I think if we had the consensuousness of religion, as we claim as a nation, the president said he had vowed by the Holy Book that he will uphold the Constitution, and that because of that, there's no way we'll be thinking of running a second time. I mean, a third time. So for those who are believers in the real sense of it, that is enough assurance. Now, of course, further debates continued thereafter. Now, there was a need to put this in paper, black and white. This is the black and white now. I am not going to run. Because what it does is, even if the president had succeeded in building thousands of kilometers of roads, constructing bridges, doing so many things, the major issue will still be that point of distraction. He's going to run.
Is it whether or not whether he's going to run?
Perhaps even if he's doing all these things to impress us, so that we will support him for a third time, that will be the discussion, and that will take a huge thing away from our national direction. Because what we have been lacking in Nigeria over time is a national direction. People had always drummed up our fault lines. It is because it's Fulani, it is because it's Igbo, it is because it's a Christian, it's because he has more Muslims in the cabinet and all that. We are not talking to issues of progression, So when you have such, still indenting our direction, it will take away so much from the achievements of the government. And I think this is what the president had done now. Let's settle this matter once and for all. So what we are going to start seeing now are achievements without any form of indentation or coloration.
Okay.
Yes, we'll be going to Benin now, where Dr. Osaworo is waiting. You've heard what they've said on the president being very emphatic on not running for a third time. Now let's move away from that to the border closure. President Buhari is saying that no matter what, Nigeria is not going to open the border for now. He said it is as Nigeria is the helper and shock absorber of the sub-region, but we cannot, as a country, allow other neighboring countries to also infringe on our constitutional right. And he's saying that Nigeria will continue the border closure until we find it, deemed to open it again. What's your take on that?
The President has the mandate of Nigerians to govern our affairs in such a way that will derive maximum benefit. And as a sovereign country, we are entitled to selecting whatever policies will enhance our own welfare too. But we should also forget that there is really no nation that practices complete autarky anywhere in the world. So we must have a kind of balance in addressing the tension between sovereignty and autarky, even in Nigeria. So the issue of border closure has generated a lot of steam. It's a very, very emotive issue. And don't also forget, even in the spirit of Africanness, that they say that our borders are artificial, really. Being artificial, we must develop technologies to make sure what we want into the country will come in, and those things we don't want into the country, we are able to filter out. So I think the panels, the the economic advisory panel set up at the federal level and so on will continuously advise from time to time how to achieve that balance, because we must make sure that the gain is going to be in excess of the losses, obviously. And if we are also promoting the welfare of West Africa, we are talking about exporting democracy to other parts of Africa and so on, and those other countries implode economically, that would be a threat to the democratic evolution. So I support the president. He's acting on our behalf. But I believe we need to do a balance between what our sovereignty demands or confers on us and the measures we apply in shutting the entire world out.
Dr. Sarah, I'll still like to stay with you just before I come back to the studio here to get Rinsola's response. And I just want to go back a bit. We'll still, continue with the land border. But that the president has come out to say, look, no more elections for me in 2023. I think it's a major statement, which we also need to pursue further. Now, do you think that coming this early might, detract from the very projections, achieving the projections that the president, has outlined in his New Year message? Will it in any way affect that?
Enhance it. Yeah, it should affect it positively. The president is a Democrat. He's a statesman. There's no doubt about the president means well. And his selling point is integrity. And coming out to state his intention early enough to ordinarily douse the anxieties of people who have some kind of unfounded fears about that. And if he wants, the president has said that our constitution is sacrosanct in that regard. Our constitution makes allowance for just 2 terms for anybody who is going to the office of the president or governor. And if he has come out this early in spite of the storm of rumors that there is no 3rd term for him, he's not going to be available, of course, if he's not going to be available, he won't be a candidate at all. So it's now left to the political parties to now think of who will be our president beyond 2023. Of course, raking some of the ingredients of today's letter into what they are going to bind together to form the vision for this Nigeria decade. 10 years is quite a long time, and we can do quite a lot. We can cover a lot of our deficit. We can actually make progress that will impress the world and will serve Nigerians as well. And then being a Democrat as well, because most of all those other things can be achieved by any other government. But this is a democracy, and the president is emphasizing that. And even the commendation of the National Assembly is also worthy of note. And I want to believe the National Assembly is being commended for its patriotic cooperation. And I don't think the National Assembly should be lured into any kind of instinctive compliance on account of that. The National Assembly should remain conscious, in spite of the good intentions of the President, that it is the trusteeship of our sovereignty resides in the National Assembly. They should be allowed to it and be jealous of it from time to time, even as they continue their streak of patriotic cooperation to move the nation forward.
Dr. Okonswa from Benin. Rinsola, what do you make of that statement as a politician?
I was actually going to mention that the first time around. It is a great thing that he has put all the speculation to rest. We remember very clearly that not too long ago in our democratic history in this Fourth Republic, there was a lot of controversy regarding a third-term agenda. So it's a really, really good thing that the president has come out once again to say that he will not be running for office again in 2023. It's very important. It is the integrity of our constitution that has been protected. And as Democrats, as law-abiding people, as people who voted for him because of his integrity, his statesmanship, his nation-building credentials, it's a very good thing that he has come out to say again, this time in a letter to Nigerians and not just at a meeting of party stalwarts, that he will not be presenting himself as a candidate in the next election. I think going forward, we can all borrow a leaf from this. Whoever sends to the position of leading this country, we can all borrow a leaf from this. It is government. Everything that starts has to come to an end. Being in office is very, very nice. As having, all the trappings of power, it's very good. But we also must be able to let go of things once the time has come to let those positions go. So I think he has shown leadership in that regard, and it is something that leaders subsequently can also learn from.
Madam Garba, Jume talked about land border drills, and of course, which the president has also, touched on in his speech. And specifically, he says that they are safeguards for our economy. People have been asking, will the borders, be reopened? But the president has come out to say, look, as long as we are sure that our safeguards, are adequate and sustainable. Can you speak to that for us?
Well, I think that in the last 2 or 3 days, we have got a new terminology defining the ongoing situation. It is now called border drill, from the press conference by Alhaji Lai Mohammed to what the president himself said. He never said border closure in his own statement. And as a matter of fact, the president's brief comment, I would call it brief on the matter, makes a larger meaning when you link it up to the press conference by the Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, because it is very clear, okay, land borders are close to importation of goods. Goods must come through sea border. Now, and what is happening is that customs revenue have almost doubled now, from about 4.5 billion to now to about 8 billion on a daily basis. So this is a huge leap. And the president is underscoring the fact that actually the nation's agriculture, in fact he called it agriculture revolution, the nation's industry is rediscovering itself. And all of a sudden we are waking up to the realization that, look, there is enormous capacity that we have to grow food that we all need. We don't have to import food. And yes, we are brotherly. We want to keep friendly relations with our neighbors. But your neighbor should be the one to help you, to achieve, your own development, your own objectives. And it might take some more time for our neighbors to come to full realization, of our own needs vis-a-vis their own.
That's what I was going to ask. When might our safeguards be considered adequate?
I think that as it is now, everyone is enjoying the honeymoon. It's going good for agriculture, for industry, for revenues and all of that. I'm not sure anybody is in a hurry to, unless, as I said. And in any case, there were requirements that were placed before our neighbors when the last meeting held. And the president had reason to commend Niger Republic at a forum for coming some distance in meeting our own needs. The fact that they had banned imports meant for Nigeria coming through their own country, and they have even dismissed some officials, for defaulting in some of those things. I think that big issue still remains Benin Republic. Let's face facts, and that I think that more is expected of them, and so long as they are unable to come to terms with the fact that we need to be alive, we need to be strong in order that we support our own neighbors, we'll continue to have this situation ongoing for some more time to come.
Mr. Ahmed Sajo, you and I coming from the Northeast, we know how it felt, with the war against insurgency. The president said we are winning the war and looking towards the challenges of winning the peace. Development process, a reconstruction is a huge project, and the president is committing the Northeast Development Commission that they will work with international stakeholders. It's a huge commitment. How do we project into 2020 before 2023 reconstruction of the Northeast?
Well, I will come to that, but let me talk to this border issue. I come from the border. My hometown. My own village is about 2-3 kilometers. In fact, there are people in my place who live in Nigeria whose farms are in Cameroon.
And so let me just give you a quote from the president's speech.
Yeah.
He says, for the first time in generation, our food plates have not been filled with import products.
And that's what I want to tell you. Yes. Our neighbors, immediate neighbors, are French speaking, and they're French in orientation. Yes. They don't eat parboiled rice. If you've ever gone to any of our French-speaking neighbors, they don't eat parboiled rice at all. So every parboiled rice they're importing is for Nigeria market. And the whole safeguard we're talking about is about quality and standard. If you are importing something into Nigeria and we do not have access to pre-shipment inspection, we're not accessed, we don't have access to knowing the quality and standard of the goods you are bringing in, you are bound to bring in any junk into the country that may save us in terms of the cost of food, but increase our cost in health care and and reduce our life expectancy because it's of poor standard, poor quality. These are some of the real key issues, and I know this very well. You're talking about reconstruction. You know, the process of managing the aftermath of a disaster situation is usually from disaster to recovery, and then from recovery to reconstruction and resettlement, and then to consolidation of the gains. We're moving in steps. Now, the process of recovery itself is still challenged because there are pockets of fringe commanders of Boko Haram who are disconnected with whatever was their center because of the degradation of the fighting capacity of Boko Haram, and because of what the president said, unifying our neighbors in the fight against insurgency, encouraging the multinational task force, encouraging Chad, Niger, and Cameroon not to allow Boko Haram safe haven on their land. Because of the president's efforts in all of these things, there are a lot of fringe commanders of Boko Haram who are now on their own. And what do? They still raid our villages for food and other supplies. Yes. And so they're making our recovery effort a bit difficult. You know, that must be addressed squarely. And as soon as we do that, we would be able to, move to the next level. I tell you, my hometown of Mubi was taken over by Boko Haram. They changed the name to Madinatul Islam, destroyed every infrastructure there. No schools, no hospitals, no churches, no mosques were standing. Today, I had opportunity last year to take the Japanese ambassador to Mubi. And we went around the town, and he saw the extent of recovery in the town. And he was telling me that the only other place he had seen this fast recovery was Kobe, his hometown in Japan, after disaster. So there's a lot of progress being made in the Northeast, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And what needs to be done, more than even, providing relief materials, is securing the buy-in of the people to go back to re-engage themselves in the trades and activities they were doing in the Northeast before the unfortunate disaster. That should be the direction. Whatever you do, whatever palliative you put in place, bringing relief materials will help, but in a very fleeting moment. What matters is that we must increase, there must be synergy between the Northeast Development Commission and the security forces, because the place must be secure before you recover and develop the place. There must be this synergy. There must be synergy with the international donors that sometimes, without any apologies, misdirect even their own interventions. It's uncoordinated. Everybody is doing what he wanted without any coordination. And sometimes what they do is so annoying that they can charter a flight from Abuja to any state in the Northeast to commission a pit toilet, making it look very, very unreasonable. All of these things must be coordinated so that we will all have a blueprint. This is how we want to move the Northeast from disaster to recovery, from recovery to development, from development to stabilization, which is the consolidation. And if we have that, and then the president ensures that all the actors secure the buy-in of the residents of the Northeast, we would be able to succeed.
Okay, let's just take Mr. Akinsheju's response before we go on a short break. Others will argue that we cannot, or we might not be able to attain adequate safeguards by, sustaining the land border drills alone. That there's also a need to, complement it with, institutions, developing our institutions, equipping our soldiers, for instance. Within the president's speech, there is provision for training of our security outfits. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think generally we need to first correct the impression that seems to say that we have closed ourselves to the world. No. 92% of international trade that has to do with Nigeria are conducted through the sea, through water. 92%. So which means those a meager 8%, will be conducted through the land borders, inclusive of the airports too. So when you do a refraction of transactions through the land border, it may just be a minimal, insignificant 3 or 4% at the most. If you also put in context the quantum of transactions over the last, let's look at specifically the third quarter when this drill started. Nigeria's imports from our neighbors in West Africa reduced from 147 billion in second quarter 2019 to 19 billion. At the same time, it increased to 1.14 trillion in the same quarter. Specifically, we did a transaction of 900 billion naira with Ghana. So what I'm trying to say essentially is we've been running a robust, or rather this border closure has shown that we can still run a robust international trade transaction, with our neighbors in West Africa. What we have been doing all this while has been the big brother thing. And that big brother thing is apparently hurting us. It hurt us to the extent that a particular country made smuggling a state policy, and the president captured it as sabotage. It's there in the president, it's well captured. Because for every policy we articulate in Nigeria, our neighbor, is also coming up with another policy to erode whatever value derivable from the policy. I remember when we took our levies and tax on second-hand cars, Tokumbo cars, as they call them, to 70%, both tax and levies. They reduced theirs to 10%. And the same thing with rice. When we took it to 35% and up to 50-something%, they reduced theirs to 4%. So it is a conscious policy to sabotage the country.
So how does it impact our economy?
Oh, so what that means is they reduce their levy, they reduce their tax. All imports meant for Nigeria will be directed to their own ports. One, it is received at that port at very, very cheap rates. So they now start moving them, smuggle them into Nigeria. We are losing values on collections in the first instance. We are also losing values on competition, because when you move these goods, they are coming in as cheap as you can imagine. And therefore, those ones, what we are producing in the country cannot, of course, compete in the market. Because, see, the average consumer will first look at the force of price before it looks at the force of quality.
But it is not just the border drills alone. We also need to look at the institutions that are charged with monitoring responsibilities.
Yeah, I want that to you.
Yes.
See, by I think sometimes in August, the Nigerian Customs announced that they have a joint plan, with the Nigerian police, and that from first quarter 2020, we will start experiencing what is called e-customs. E-customs will be the deployment of drones, and technology to man our borders. Now that's building institutions, because One, we know how porous our borders are, and we are talking of more than 200,000 kilometers of open lines. So a creative approach to sustaining, but securing the border would actually be e-borders, truly, because you cannot have foot on ground to man that space. So you deploy drones, you deploy technology, and in that way you are able to now to secure the place. But the most important thing is price, the economic value. Once you remove the economic value and attraction of smuggling, you will reduce it as much as possible. And that is what is happening now. I have been a major advocate of protectionism, and we need it before the AFCTA comes, into activation. We need to empower our industry. We need to enhance our productive base. If we don't do all those things, instead of us we are supposed to be the major beneficiary of an enlarged market. Yeah. But if we don't increase our productive capacity, we'll just continue to be the dumping ground.
Well, we also know the impact of protectionism, Mr. Kinsuju. Countries that practice it, we know what happened to them.
No. Yes. I disagree. It's not supposed to be a continuous thing. It's not a forever thing. It is first you close shop, enhance your capacity, then open shop. You are stronger. Let other people come in. Because if you don't do that, people bring in and just run over you. And you become vulnerable all this while. And that's why rice farmers are happy now. Poultry farmers are happy. Our manufacturing sectors are happy. Table C, part of the 900 billion that Ghana bought from us, the value of goods Ghana bought from us, about 150 billion came from cables, Nigerian cables.
Yes, we'll talk about that and so much more before we go, but we have to take a break now. When we return, we have some tweets. Nigerians are talking. We'll read them out to you. We'll be right back.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum product across the neighbors so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on a daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
Chief, good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit there, my body there for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jab questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria this first day in the new year 2020. And we're looking at Mr. President's New Year letter to Nigerians and, of course, the impact and projecting into the new year. We've got some tweets. Dele Jack Solomon is the first tweet I'm reading. He's saying, fighting corruption, increasing security, tackling unemployment, diversifying the economy, enhancing climate resilience and agriculture, boosting living standards of Nigerians as main policy priorities that President Muhammadu Buhari-led government should continue to seek and pursue in the new year.
And Titus Monday Knock tweets, Happy New Year to all Nigerians, and my sincere hope is that Nigeria kills corruption before it kills the nation. Secondly, no nation progresses and thrives in webs of insecurity, banditry, political upheavals, thuggery, terrorism, criminalities. All must be completely nipped in the bud.
And Ibrahim Moduja Aji tweets, the expectations and projections should start and end with the implementation of the 2020 budget. He said, please let implementation of the budget start in earnest so that at the end of the year, the country will be boasting of 90% implementation. Happy New Year, Nigerians.
And Mike Anyauko tweets, Happy New Year, all Nigerians. Grateful to Almighty God. We made it. We want development in all sectors of our economy, especially critical ones like power, road, constructions, health. The challenge of unemployment should be vigorously tackled by both government and private establishments. The value of Naira must be strengthened.
And Lawal Ibrahim Olamilekon tweets, FJ should please pay an appropriate attention to the sector of, to education sector, because the success of a nation is in the hands of our education. If the youth are well educated, most of the problems of this country will be eradicated. Good morning, Nigeria. Happy New Year.
And Mulima Idimato tweets, I hope to see a focus of attention by this administration on the Nigerian police force as one of the institutions, if well positioned and funded, will correct a lot of our national ills, but not as it is presently.
And Aminu Modibo tweets, despite the challenges in 2019, Nigeria is getting better under this administration. We hope and pray for a prosperous Nigeria in 2020. Thank you, all of you, for your tweets. It's a new year, and let's quickly move on the very positive notes as Aminu Modibo has raised. And we're beginning with the agri sector. That is where a lot of positives. This government is recording a lot of positives, and many Nigerians are returning back to the farm. Malam Garba, we've heard of new agreements with some, African countries, Morocco and Russia, specifically. Of course, Russia is not in Africa. It's not in Africa. But how will these agreements facilitate, our objectives in the agri sector?
Well, with the Morocco and Russia, what we have are agreements for the supply of phosphates, which is a major ingredient in the production of fertilizers that we utilize. And we're already seeing the impact of the agreement with Morocco, which was the first to come, in the reduction in the cost of fertilizer and its availability. Cost of fertilizer had risen to about 14,000 a bag before this process came. It has come down to 5,500 naira all across the country. And by that, this country had saved enormous amounts of money, $200 million US used for the importation of fertilizer every year, and about 60 billion naira in subsidy that had gone into that. The president spoke about a number of other schemes. For instance, the thing about the grazing scheme that will be inaugurated with the model from Gombe State, for which he said 200,000 hectares of land had been procured. That's a major development, and if that takes off, then you are directly addressing the issue of pressure on land space, which has created this unnecessary killings, wars between farmers and the herders. And we're also modernizing. Look at the scheme the president just talked about agriculture revolution, and what more would you be doing than the inauguration of the agri mechanization scheme in 700 local council areas. Of course, people will ask, why not all of the 774 local governments? I don't imagine that Ikoyi local government or Apapa would make a land available for you for agri mechanization. I mean, there are some that would certainly have to do without this scheme, but these are enormous leaps. Important schemes that will launch this country. And in addition to all of that, and they have talked about in NI, and the Honorable has spoken. So the value chain is important, because you are not just growing, you are processing, you are also preparing for exportation.
All right, Rinsola,
Yes, ma'am.
2020, you know, we've heard even of Vision 2020. So we are now in the era of Vision 2020. Yes, and it's a vision of, you know, making Nigerians more, well, developing our human capacity to be able to drive knowledge economy, which is what through ICT. It is also to make governance more inclusive, making people own, you know, the dividends of our democracy. If we are to project, you know, into this year, what areas do you think that, you know, should more attention be given? The president has outlined areas of priority, but from your perspective, you know, representing the youth here, what areas of priority would you suggest?
As earlier mentioned, I liked that he highlighted quite a number of areas like power and the effect that has on productivity. However, one thing I always say is that the president will speak regarding development from a national perspective, from a federal perspective, but we have 36 states. And if the federal is putting in a lot of work in certain areas and there is no commensurate effort at state level, those efforts are not going to be felt by the people. Most of our people, very few of us live in Abuja here. Lagos, there is a lot to Nigeria outside of Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and, you know, the major cities. So a lot of responsibility also lies on our state governors. And I try as much as possible to encourage our young people, especially, to also hold our leaders accountable at state level. A lot of states signed their budgets into law this December period, just before the new year. We need to find out what is the implementation level of these budgets. I know in Lagos it was the last one was 71%. There are other states that have come out with those figures, but we're not really doing a lot with respect to monitoring our state governors and our officials at state level. Take education, for instance. There is a limit to how much the federal government can do. Primary education, which is the bedrock of everything, the foundation of knowledge itself, is the responsibility of the local government, for example. Now, funds are going to local governments, but what are we doing to ensure that those funds are being expended as they ought to? States, we have general hospitals, other health facilities that fall under the purview of states. Primary healthcare centers fall under the purview of our local governments. There is only so much that the federal government can do on its own. So that means we also have to work really hard to hold our leaders at state level accountable, to monitor developments at our states, to see that what we're actually doing tallies with the figures being declared as internally generated revenue. For instance, if we're declaring a certain figure, how is it that salaries have not been paid? Why are we still owing pensioners? Things of that sort. We need to be more active in holding leaders to account at that level. Also, power, yes, there are things like we have the concurrent and the exclusive list. Power falls under the purview of the federal government. The president has highlighted things that will be done. The fact that we should hope to see improvements from 2021, I believe. Some initiatives are going to be implemented this year. We need to monitor that process very effectively to make sure that, okay, this has been said, is it actually happening? And if it seems like there are shortfalls along the way, we also need to rise to the occasion to hold our government accountable. Now, when it comes to creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, we cannot create jobs if businesses are not succeeding. The bulk of these businesses are operating in our states. What kind of policies do we have at state level? Are the policies hostile to businesses that might want to be domiciled there, that might want to hire our people and provide jobs? So these are all the things that we need to look at. The president has spoken about infrastructure, 47 roads, but the bulk of the infrastructure that we need actually falls under the purview of our state governors. So they have budgets for works and infrastructure. How are they going to implement these budgets? The budgets that have been passed, did they make realistic projections in allocating funds to the different ministries or to different projects? Are they going to complete projects? Many of our governors are new. Are they going to complete the projects started by their predecessors? These are the things that we need to monitor to ensure that we are not wasting our resources at state level. If we're going to create an enabling environment for businesses, we talk about the ease of doing business at the federal level, but if states are also not committed to make it easier for businesses to thrive within their domains, whatever we're doing at the federal is not going to have an impact at the grassroots. The bulk of our graduates who need jobs are at home. They're back home in our states, in our local governments, trying to find places to hire them. So if our states are also hostile to businesses, we're not going to get as much traction on this thing. Empower, the other social investment programs can only do so much. We have millions of young Nigerians who need jobs. So we also need to know that our governors are alive to their responsibilities.
Okay, as an advocate of gender and youth equity, do you think Nigerian youths are ready to take on this challenge by Mr. President? It's Nigeria's decade.
You know, I believe that young people are ready. But the question is, are all of us ready? The answer is no. It's a very diverse population we have. At the same time, it's like we have a lot of elderly people who also didn't vote. Yeah. So the lack of awareness of civic responsibilities is something that cuts across all the age groups. It's not just with young people alone. However, we do have young people who are very active advocates. A lot of young people have gained international recognition even this past year for the work that they're doing in holding government to account, in advocating for different causes. So we have a lot of young people who know what they need to do, who are working towards getting things done, who are trying to make sure that other young people, you know, become active citizens. Not all of us are going to do politics, but by all means, decisions that our leaders make affect our lives directly or indirectly. It's going to affect us, going to affect our children. So we need to be very up to date with what they're doing. We need to know how to engage the system and to ensure that policies implemented favor us.
All right, Turuntala, thank you. Let's quickly take the last one from Dr. Osawaro Kozwa in Benin. Dr. Sawaro, this is the Vision 2020 year. It is the year, of course, we aspire to join the League of 20 Developed Economies. We're not yet there because the World Bank's development indices show that we are progressing slowly but steadily. But if you look at the raft of, projects and programs that Mr. President, has outlined in his New Year message, do they point to probably realizing this goal?
Well, partially, I'm afraid. It's a good thing he's giving some concrete mentioning to some of the projects. But for visioning, you're talking about large, even hairy goals that don't have to be specific when talking about visioning. And then if in 2020, we are still talking about agriculture as a major source of employment, I think we have to do some kind of rethink. Because a kind of index of development is the fewer the people who are committed to agriculture, the more developed the country is. Other parts of the world are talking about artificial intelligence, talking about robotics, talking about big data, and even talking about the green economy as far as environmental protection is concerned. I think we should have a way to include all these things in our plan and be bolder in the way we look at the future.
All right, thank you, Dr. Osawaro Konzwa. We want to use this opportunity to appreciate you. You've joined us from our Benin Network studio, public affairs analyst. Many thanks to you, and do have a wonderful New Year. All right.
Can I make?
Yes, please go ahead.
Briefly.
But very briefly, the president had set the tone. It's left for us, all of us, and I'm happy my brother Garbashew is here. The media managers of the government, the president and the government, must continue this process. It must gain momentum and it must continue. Nigerians must continue to be reminded of some of those things that the president said, so that we continue to bridge the disconnect between the government and the governed, so the people become the real protectors of some of the lofty goals of Mr. President. And I think we need to do, all of us that are in the media, those of us in NTA, in the other media organizations, the message of unity in the president's broadcast must be amplified, must be escalated to reach every nook and cranny of this country. Not everybody is going to read these papers, but we will continue to engage them in conversations along these lines until actually Nigerians accept to support the process.
Mr. Kishijo, not everybody will read these papers. Quickly, briefly, your last comment. What can we do?
My last comment is for us to be practical and realistic. The president has said these things that he's doing now are supposed to have been done. We should not be talking of agriculture now if we had attended to agriculture before. But we cannot jump into all those, our utopians, as it were. We need to build a foundation. So, we've lost decades.
A foundation. We need to
we've had lost decades. We are just building foundations now, and that we need to have a strong foundation before we jump, into that momentum. This is what the president is helping us to do. If we had had a president like this 20 years ago that had envisioned all these kind of things, by now we won't be talking about base things. These are base primary things, issues in economy. We should not be talking about them now. But this is our reality. We have not attended to these things before now. We are just now attending to them, our reality. And we should thank God that, eventually, we are attending to them.
We're only beginning to wake up.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Nia Akinsuju, investment and financial expert. As always, your input is very, very valued.
My pleasure.
And Wisola Abiola, advocate for youth inclusion and gender equality. Thank you for joining us on
Thank you for having me
today. And Mr. Garba Shehu, SSA Media and Publicity, as always, a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sports update is next.
The Nigerian volleyball